Dickau here for the Field of 68 Media Network and the Bulldog Broadcast with a season recap. First off, thank you to our sponsors throughout the season. mcgillivrayenvironmental. If you've got any land surveying, land needs on the construction side, environmental side, don't hesitate to reach out to them. Their link should be in the bio of these episodes. Whether you're Western Montana, Northern Idaho, Eastern Washington, Kip and his team will do a phenomenal job of taking care of whatever your needs might be in that field. Also want to thank Wave Capital Lending and Dan Cantiana for both Wave Capital Lending on the real estate investing side and Geico Insurance here in Spokane. Look Dan Cantiana up. He does a tremendous job. He is one of the most insightful agents I've come across, but also the most personable agents to get you the answer that you need in a timely manner to make a decision. Also want to thank Shoot 360 Spokane for their support of the Bulldog broadcast as well throughout this season. But let's get right into this recap. Very interesting season for Gonzaga. I think, complex realignment. I still think Gonzaga is positioned in a place where they will have opportunities to get back to a Final Four and get to a national title game and ultimately win it. I still think this program is built in such a way to withstand a lot of these challenges that are now in front of them. I say challenges for a number of reasons. One, the transfer portal is a challenge. We'll touch on that a little bit more deep in regards to the current roster, but the staff, Coach Few and all the other coaches have to be nimble as heck as soon as the season is done to be prepared to scour the transfer portal and find guys that fit their culture, their philosophy of how they want to play, their competitiveness, as well as be skilled enough to be at the level that they want to continue to play at. And so I think that's something that has to be looked at. The NIL piece, I've had a lot of questions come about to myself, both in direct messages on social media, as well as just throughout my different ventures in the broadcasting world this past year about where Gonzaga's NIL is compared to other schools in the power conferences or in the mid-majors, et cetera, et cetera. And here's what I'll say about NIL. NIL, I think, is long overdue. I felt that when I was a player 20-some years ago that we should have gotten some type of financial incentive or payment structure, or have been able to use my name, image, and likeness to be in a commercial, to do a basketball camp in the summer. But those things we weren't afforded that ability, that luxury during those times. Now, what I've always felt for a long time is the amount of hours and the amount of time that you put into being a student athlete, as well as the interest, potential revenue generated for schools, is such that we should be paid. But I believe it should be paid in an employer type structure. So I've always felt that college athletes, and I still, even more so to this day, I don't think it's going back because I think the NCAA put their head in the sand for too long. But I've always felt that freshmen should make X at whatever it is. If a Power 5 conference team has more ability revenue-wise to pay, then they would pay clearly more. But you would be paid X as a freshman, a bonus as a sophomore, a little bit more as a junior, a little bit more as a senior. And then within that, if you were to stay at that second school, you would continue along that same path, that same structure. So this structure I'm talking about is if you stay at the same school. If you become an all-league player, there would be a bonus attached. No different than a lot of NBA player contracts are written up, where if you make an all-star team or if you make an all-NBA team, you have a bonus. And then it would be another bonus. For example, if you were maybe, say, Conference Player of the Year, there would be another bonus. If you were academic all-league, there would be another bonus. If, for example, your team won a conference title, you would all get a bonus. again, it could either be based on year of school you are, length of time at that school. If you do transfer, because I do think you should be able to transfer, although I think you should have to sit out a year, although I don't think we're going back in regards to that. And then I believe if you win an NCAA tournament game, just as almost every single coach in the college ranks has written into their contract a bonus to getting to certain benchmarks along the NCAA tournament, each player would get a bonus all along the lines of how they progress during a season. So that, I believe, would be the structure, should have been a structure of how to pay players. Now, in regards to the NIL, you're seeing just astronomical numbers being thrown out there, and really it's paying to play, as opposed to what a true NIL marketing deal in the professional ranks would be. Hey, you do a commercial, you do an appearance, we'll pay you X for your time. That, I think, would be left on the table, and you can continue to do that. But then clearly that's where a lot of the other advantages to being in a major media market would come, as opposed to being in a smaller media market. The other thing would be, and too many young players that are now in the transfer portal and are searching for NIL deals don't understand, you don't get those monster deals if you don't perform. So rightfully so, Cooper Flagg has a lot of national deals. The most interesting, unique one, the most perfect one this over the past week that's occurred is Derek Queen at Maryland getting an NIL deal with Dairy Queen. I don't know if it's going to end up being a billboard or in certain parts of the country, or if it's going to be a quick marketing blitz, even though Maryland's out. I don't know. But those are what true NIL deals are, not how they currently are working with most schools. The caveat to figure out here is the revenue generating piece that's going to come back to the schools, and then the revenue sharing. How does that get divvied up? There's still a lot of gray area on what exactly that means and what exactly that entails in regards to, if two schools are in the same conference, do they pay the same amount for player, say, 1 versus, say, player 8, who doesn't have as much of an impact on winning? So those are some things that are interesting and unique storylines to definitely keep your eye on. But in regards to Gonzaga competing in the NIL space as opposed to a lot of these power conference schools, yes, it's going to be difficult. It's always, since the inception of NIL, it has been difficult. I think it will continue to be difficult. But I also think, Gonzaga has that culture, that brand, that the ability to prepare you for a longer term career in the pros and a successful long-term career in the pros. That I think if two offers are similar, I think Gonzaga in many cases will get the nod for players that are in the transfer portal. So in regards to collective or the NIL and how much money can be generated for Gonzaga as opposed to these other schools, a big thing to look at is just the size of the city of Spokane as compared to the size of a city like, say, just using Chicago as an example, a little bit away from University of Illinois in Champaign, or UCLA, USC down in LA, or Miami down in Florida, or you even have Carolina and Duke just outside of Charlotte, much bigger cities. You're going to see that Indianapolis with Purdue close by, as well as IU close by. There are discrepancies that allow other programs to have access to more money. The other thing that really comes into play is the size of schools. If you just look at, say I know Gonzaga is close to 7,000 students, but let's say, just for the sake of this, 5,000 students, and 1,250 students graduate every year. Well, you now have 1,250 potential boosters that could become a very large, what they call whale in the NIL portal space, where you're able to maybe pay for players. And if you're looking at a school of 5,000 versus a school of, say, 50,000, like Ohio State, Michigan, Texas Tech, Texas, some of these very large schools, instead of 1,250 kids graduating a year and being potential donors to as boosters to NIL funds, you're looking at 12,500. Well, out of that 10x amount more of potential donors, how many more chances are you going to have to find a truly passionate sports fan that has hit it unbelievably big in business? You see it right now. St. John's has made a complete resurgence under Rick Pitino, and they've got a billionaire who is founder of, I believe it was Body Armor Sports Drink, that essentially has a large checkbook that is willing to help St. John's basketball and Rick Pitino be able to go after and build a roster that they feel can compete to win Big East titles, to go deep into the NCAA tournament, and potentially win a national title. And so if you just look at the logistics, it is becoming, it is a challenge, but I don't think it's a challenge that if Gonzaga's coaching staff, which I feel they're doing a great job of being strategic, of going after the right guys who are playing for the right reasons. Yes, we'll get monetarily compensated, fair enough, that they are still going to stay at the level that they've been at for so many years. And so I think Gonzaga's positioned in a place where they're still capable of contending for Sweet 16s, contending for Final Fours, and ultimately a national title. But when you look in the totality of the last 26 years, only Kansas and maybe Duke and Michigan State can really challenge for the level of continued success that Gonzaga has had. 16 years in a row now, Gonzaga has won a first-round game. 9 Sweet 16 appearances was snapped this year when they lost to Houston. But Houston now is in their 6th straight Sweet 16. So Gonzaga had the longest run alongside, I believe it was UCLA and Duke, for longest appearances in the Sweet 16. So they figured out ways to get it done. They'll continue to figure out ways to get it done. But when you look at the totality of everything that they've done over this stretch, it's really mind-boggling. And I think a lot of fans need to continue to remind themselves, 26 tournaments, 16 straight first-round wins, 9 Sweet 16s, 13 overall Sweet 16s, 2 Final Fours. It's truly incredible what this program has done. Now, to talk about the round of 32 loss this year, wasn't planning on touching on it too much because we're 4 or 5 days removed of the game, and I wanted to touch on some other season recap stuff. Thank you to our presenting sponsors. If you have interest in joining the Bulldog Broadcast, the Field of 68 Media Network, for being a sponsor, don't hesitate to reach out to me, Dan Dickau, at hotmail.com. Presenting sponsor, mcgillivrayenvironmental can handle any of your construction needs, specializing in new construction, repairs, residential and commercial asphalt paving, excavation, environmental remediation, and hazardous waste. Reach out to Kip McGillivray at McGillivray Environmental today at 208-556-6384 for your free estimate. Are you interested in investing in Pacific Northwest real estate? Are you an accredited investor, private investor, or want to be a private investor? Look up my friend Dan Can's website, investwithdancan.com. I've known Dan for over a decade, and he is honest, hardworking, truthful, and will do a great job in helping you navigate the world of real estate lending and investing. Check him out today, investwithdancan.com.
The world's leading immersive basketball training experience that combines in-person skill development with digital gamification and virtual competition. At Shoot 360, you will train with our coaches, measure your skills with our proprietary technology, and track your progress on the Shoot 360 mobile app. Shoot 360 Spokane. Unlock your game.
Looking for a reliable local insurance agency that cares about you? Look no further than Dan Can Insurance Agency. They are local, committed to providing personalized coverage for home, auto, and life insurance. No more guessing. Their 8 friendly agents take the time to understand your needs and give you the best rates around. Call Dan Can Insurance today at 509-328-0000 888-888-1422 or visit them at dancanspokane.com. Because at Dan Can Insurance Agency, your family, not just a policy. Also, Dan Can has been an agent of mine for years. I highly recommend him and his valuable team.
First, I think Gonzaga was underseeded as an 8. I thought they should have been 7, possibly a 6, but more than that, more than likely a 7. And when you look at the brackets with each of the ones, Florida, Duke, Auburn, and Houston was clearly the one that I thought was going to give them the most amount of problems in that potential second-round matchup, and it came true to fruition. They fell down early, but they battled back, and they had a heck of a second half, and they gave themselves a lot of chances to get over the hump. I mean, it was a one-possession game over the final couple minutes. So, Gonzaga, had it been a different draw as a 7 seed, we could be looking at a 10th consecutive Sweet 16 and really energizing the fan base, thinking it's going to be a potential Final Four team because they had been peaking and playing so well at the end of the year. But again, let's go back to, overall season recap and what's next. Gonzaga finished 26-9. Those 9 losses, 3 of them were in overtime, total of 46 points. The problem many times came winning close games. They didn't win a single game between 1 and 5 points. Now, they lost a few games within that stretch, but they weren't able to win the close ones. And that, was a telltale sign of why they were an 8 seed in my eyes, because, say had they gone into the NCAA tournament at 20, instead of being 25-8, say maybe they were 27-6 going into the NCAA tournament, winning 2 of those close games. Just throw UCLA out as an example. Say throw Kentucky, which they lost to in overtime, into the mix of wins. They probably, to be quite honest, with that Kentucky win, had it been a Kentucky win and a UCLA win, it probably would have been a 5 seed or maybe even a 4. Who knows with the metrics, because their presumptive analytics, your net, your Ken Palm, were unbelievably good. It's the games against the other metrics that weren't quite so good. The resultative metrics weren't quite so good for Gonzaga. But where do they go from here? Clearly, transfer portal is live. It's open. I wanted to wait a couple days again on this podcast simply to see what movement may have already occurred in the transfer portal. And we've now got 3 Gonzaga players in. Dusty Stromer, which I wasn't too surprised at, especially with the emergence of Emmanuel Innocenti throughout the season. June, also in the transfer portal. I wasn't too shocked or too surprised about that. He showed signs, but when he got opportunities, he never was able to make the most of them and really crack the rotation. And then Michael Ajayi, a lot of fans have made comments to me that they're really shocked and surprised about this one. I'm not, simply for the fact that, first and second in the league a season ago at Pepperdine in scoring and rebounding. A lot of people thought that was just going to translate to Gonzaga. The athleticism, the defense, the rebounding, that can all translate defensively. But what many times takes a lot of time is how you take those pieces, your strengths, and weave them into what Gonzaga does. Because you look at what Anton Watson provided to the team a season ago as a 5th-year senior, and having been around the program for 5 years, as well as having been around the program when he was growing up here at Gonzaga Prep, understood all the nuances of the offense, the spacing, the timing, the cuts, the angles of screens, all those things that you just kind of innately pick up can't be asked to be picked up in a 2 or 3 month stretch, which is, I think, a lot of people were thinking about and anticipating from Michael Ajayi. Now, I'm guessing he probably put a fair bit of undue stress or expectations on himself simply because of what he did last year, having gone into putting his name into the NBA draft and going through the pre-draft process with some workouts and being at the combine and being on a number of draft boards early on the season, probably put some expectations on him that weren't fair. Now, I think he's a guy with NBA potential based on his physical skill set, based on his ability to rebound and defend. But I don't think after watching him in a close capacity this year as a broadcaster, I do think he'll be an NBA player. I just think it's a longer ramp to get to that point that fans were expecting. So it'll be interesting to see where the three of those guys land. I would imagine June and Dusty will probably drop down a level. That's just my early initial thought. Could be a Big West school. Could be I don't think it would be a Big Sky school, but it could potentially maybe even be a kind of a flat transfer to a Mountain West school as well. And then for Michael Ajayi, just based on his physicality and those attributes, I would think that he would probably transfer up to like a Big 10, a Big 12 type of school, just based on, he had some good games against physical teams. He showed promise on the glass. He has the ability to defend multiple positions. He's got good size. But I think those are a couple things to look out for in regards to where those guys land. But the next question becomes, Gonzaga lost a number of good, impactful players. Players have been a part of the program for a while, in particular Ben Gregg and Nolan Hickman. Both have been there for 5 and 4 years. I thought both of them had some really great moments as a Zag. I think they also had some struggles, each of them individually as a Gonzaga player. But I think that allowed them to get to the point where, they were, I know Greg was in and out of the starting lineup, but they were essentially huge pieces of the starting lineup in the rotation for each of them and had some really good moments as Gonzaga players. So they'll have to figure out ways to replace both of those guys in regards to hustle, heart, leadership, skills, overall embodiment of culture of what they want to bring in. Next one that's clearly gone is Caliph Battle. He was an interesting one throughout the season. Some inconsistencies, a little bit of, hey, this is my 6th year of college. He's been to a number of stops. Maybe some of the stops that he had been at previously, the staff and the coaches didn't hold him as accountable to playing the right way. And so you saw a couple cracks here and there. But by the end of the season, I thought you really saw a player who really bought into being at Gonzaga and laid it all on the line. And I thought he was playing really good basketball at the end of the year, which is obviously what you want to see from your seniors going out. It'll be interesting to see where his career takes him next. I don't think he's an NBA player at this moment in time. He could grow into it. He could become one. But he'll definitely have an opportunity probably to either work his way through the G League and get a crack at it, or he'll head to Europe if the situation is right. And then Ryan Nembhard. He's obviously exhausted his ability or his eligibility. I think he maximized his ability and did everything he could in 2 years at Gonzaga. Got off to a little bit of a slow start as a junior, kind of getting up to speed with all the ball screen reads, all the timing of things. But about halfway through last year, everything clicked. And I know he didn't get added to the Cousy Award finalist list, which has the top 5 point guards of the year, which I thought it was ridiculous. But I thought he put together one of the great stretches in Gonzaga point guard history in regards to just overall making plays for guys, setting the example at that position. It's hard to truly stack, hey, this is the greatest point guard of all time in Gonzaga history. Clearly, John Stockton is, but his college career wasn't what his NBA career is, and so there's a little discrepancy there. But after John, it really becomes the eye of the beholder. Do you like a big point guard with size? Do you like a shooting point guard? Do you like a passing point guard? Do you like a well-balanced point guard that does a little bit of everything, including rebounding, defense? What did your team do in regards to winning? Was it a deep run in the NCAA tournament? Was it a high national ranking? Awards that you accumulated, whatever those things are. But I think Ryan Nembhard truly established himself as one of the great point guards in the history of this team, this program. And he led the country in assists. And, in regards to his future, just speaking as a smaller former point guard myself, that's always going to be a knock on him. But I think there's ways to go around fighting that. And he does it by just continuing to play game the way he showed this year and making plays for others. Because at the end of the day, if you're a point guard, right, and you make plays for your team to make it easier for your teammates, and you make plays for others to help your team, you're going to get a long look. And if you can do that at the next level, whether you're 6 foot or 6'5", I think there's a place for you. Now, I do think he's going to have to shore up his shooting ability a little bit, but that's something that will come with time. And I don't think that's as big of a knock on him at this time as some may perceive. So now we look at kind of what's next. Who could be back? The big one out there is Graham Ike. He has another year of eligibility. It'll be interesting to see what he decides. Averaged 17 and 7 on the year, right around 60% from the field. I think he will be back. I hope that he's back. I think that if he takes a big picture look at it, he'll realize how successful that he's been at Gonzaga, and he's got a chance to continue to become an even better player in Gonzaga's system and in their player development. So I hope that he's back. Braden Huff, I think, is another question mark. I hope he's back. His ability to score on that low block, is something that was an advantage throughout the year, bringing it in off the bench. He was inconsistent at times, but a lot of that inconsistency was due to his struggles at times on the defensive end of the floor and picking up numerous fouls. There was a game this year, I believe he either picked up 4 or he fouled out in less than 10 minutes. And that's something that, I'm sure was addressed, was worked on. But that's something that impacted him at times. You saw the 2 big lineup Gonzaga threw out there with Ike and Huff at the end of the year. And I'm sure that's a big conversation piece for the staff as well as for Ike and Huff and what that would look going forward. But I think he'll be back. I hope that he's back. But I can only imagine that, being a Midwest guy, being a talented left-handed scorer on the interior, if he were to go in the transfer portal, there would be a fair amount of suitors for him. Ismaili Diani, I hope he's back. I think he's back. Battled injuries throughout the year, had a knee, had a concussion. But, the thing is, when people say, hey, this is a deep roster, it might be a deep roster, but there then lies the challenge of finding roles and minutes for everybody. And unfortunately, due to those injuries we spoke of, Diani really didn't get much of a chance to crack the rotation. Saw lots of bright spots, saw lots of growth in his game. And I think if he comes back, I think he's going to be a major piece to what they do next season because he provides rim protection that they haven't had in a while, in particular since Chet Holmgren. Next player to come back would be Emmanuel Innocenti. He's someone that I was actually wanting to see more of early in the season. Early in the year, he was just getting spot minutes, situational defensively, and then he bust through and he was able to kind of earn regular, for the most part, double-digit minutes the last half or 2/3 of the season. Didn't shoot it the way I'm sure he's capable of, because when you look at it, he's got good mechanics, good fundamentals in his shot. But many times when you're getting bit minutes and you're known as your role is defending, you get that 1 or 2 opportunities a game and you put a lot of pressure on yourself, and there's a lot of external pressure on you as well to make that shot and to knock down jumpers. He didn't show that consistently, but I see a player who can grow into somebody who can be a consistent 3-point threat. He's also terrific in transition, but really defensively, he's one of the best perimeter defenders I've seen in quite some time come through this program. A player that not a lot of guys know about, but has been kind of waiting in the wings, redshirted this year, which is not the normal path in college these days, but played for 2 years at Colgate in the Patriot League, was the player of the year in the Patriot League a season ago, redshirted, learning the nuances of Gonzaga's offense under Ryan Nembhard and Nolan Hickman. I think Braden Smith's got a chance to be a good player for this program. Really good passer. He can score a little bit from that point guard position. Again, some people are going to say it's a size issue. Again, I don't buy into that maybe as much as others. If you've got the total package of being able to score, facilitate, make plays for others, and then you're competitive as heck in situations defensively and on the glass. So I'm not too worried about that. what do I think Gonzaga needs to look at in the transfer portal? I think they need more shooting. I think that's something that clearly affected them and bothered them throughout the season, was a true consistent deep ball threat. Now, could that be Steele Venters, who the rumblings are that he's going to come back for his final year of eligibility after having missed the last 2 years with injuries, first an ACL and then secondly with an Achilles. He potentially provides that long-term threat, but you also then are coming off the fact that he's had 2 major injuries. What's he going to be like? What's his timeline coming back from that Achilles? I'm pulling for him. He's a tremendous story. I think he's a really good basketball player. But I do think you need to look for more shooting and more consistent shooting, preferably at that wing spot and with size for Gonzaga. I think you need a combo guard with size. Nolan's Hickman kind of had that combo guard position over the last couple of years when Ryan Nembhard came in. About 6'3", wiry, strong. I thought he grew into being a really good defender, but I think you need to get a combo guard who can initiate the offense when need be, who can make pick and roll reads, but that can also get down the hill and score. So a combo with size that can shoot it and can score a little bit. And then I also think you got to find a slashing wing. So is that something that Innocenti is going to grow into? Do you need to go out and find another 6'7", 6'8" wing that maybe can provide that is a 3 and at times could be your 4 depending on if you go small? So that's something. The last thing would be rim protection. And I think you've got that with Diani if he stays. If not, I think that's something to really look out for in the portal. You look at Gonzaga metric-wise defensively, they improved as the season went on. I thought they could have been more consistent, especially early in the stretch, early in the season. But I think, again, a lot of times when you're looking at some defensive inconsistencies, if you have a rim protector or a paint protector like a Shemek Karnowski was years ago, you've got the ability to really change up and mix your defenses in different ways. So, if you give an opponent a steady diet of switching or trapping a ball screen or downing coverages, but you don't have a rim protector, so when the coverage breaks down, they can't score at the rim, you've got an enormous advantage. And so if they can find someone in that portal, if Diani doesn't stay and makes an impact, to be able to really kind of provide that Shemek Karnowski, Brandon Clark, Chet Holmgren, Zach Collins type protection at the rim. So, it might seem like kind of, frustrated, a little bit down on the way the season went. I think this was another great season for Gonzaga basketball. You finished 26-9. No, you didn't win the WCC title, but you won the conference tournament to get the automatic bid. There was a lot of negative commentary out there, at least nationally, in regards to what's wrong with Gonzaga. They're not what they needed to be. But at the end of the day, I think they ended up maximizing who they were, what they could become, and played their best basketball of the season. It's the madness of the NCAA tournament is who are your matchups. And Gonzaga's matchup was the worst of the potential 1 seeds that they could get. So I think all in all, a good season for Gonzaga, another trip to the NCAA tournament, but it's also a chance to reset in the offseason, and the staff will figure out a way to get back, not just the NCAA tournament again, but to get to that second weekend and to then find a way to get to the Final Four, because I think Gonzaga still got huge opportunities in front of them, even with the challenges of the NIL, of conference realignment, of the transfer portal. I think Gonzaga's got huge opportunities in front of them. So appreciate you listening throughout the season. We will be back next year on the Bulldog Broadcast on the Field of 68 Media Network. We're going to start a little earlier next year, probably late September, early October, to begin to break down all the roster movement. But again, a huge thanks to our sponsors, mcgillivrayenvironmental, Wave Capital Lending, Shoot 360 Spokane, and Geico Insurance here in Spokane. If you want to be a part of supporting the Bulldog Broadcast, helps pay for our producers, our editors, please reach out to me on social media with a direct message. I'd love to hear from you and get some insight of how you'd like to support and be involved. So thanks again. Take care. Enjoy the rest of the NCAA tournament. I think Florida is going to win ultimately in San Antonio, but enjoy the rest of the tournament. Until next season, go Zags.
Yeah.